Hi everyone, my name is Peyton, and in this video what I want to do is cover how to actually relight an old environment. So this environment that you see here is actually an environment that I made in college. It's almost 6 years old or so, but it's a plain workshop, and I basically wanted to take this from Unreal Engine 4 and bring it into Unreal Engine 5. Now the big thing with this, at least, it was kind of like conceptually done with the lighting and all. So the lighting does look nice, and I think it has like a lot of just like softness to it. But the main problem would be that it's not necessarily like game ready, because the lighting itself was actually very like placed and manicured in the locations that it was placed throughout the environment. So I think this environment probably has like 30 or 40 different lights in it, and in an actual game that wouldn't really like work and make sense. And so I wanted to basically actually take it into UE5 and show how to go about doing that. So now here we are actually in UE5, and what I want to do first is go about pretty much deleting all of the old lights. So what I want to do is go actually over to the outliner, and in the outliner I'm just going to type in light, and I'm going to scroll down and basically find the different lights that we have. So it looks like we have a couple of spotlights that are being used throughout the environment, and this is what I mean by like them being placed like all throughout. It was pretty heavily controlled, and you look at the actual FPS that we can see here, and it's 50 FPS, which for a nice computer and it being 6 years old, that is definitely running pretty slow, I would say, for this environment. I think we could do much better actually just using UE5. So I'm going to select all my spotlights and actually delete them. Now I do have this little box here showing up, and the point of basically it asking is because I have a light in a blueprint, so it's going to lose that target that's basically being used, but that's no problem at all. We can delete that. And then what I want to do is additionally actually click on I believe this is my a static mesh, but then I have all these point lights, so I think it's like at least 17 point lights, and they're kind of doing in like some fill lighting information and stuff in the environment as well. Of course with lumen we'll be able to fill in the environment a lot better with that. And then so I think this is just the static mesh, so I don't actually need to change anything in there. And then blueprint is good now, so I'm going to go ahead and delete the light mask portals, and I think pretty much just delete the directional lights. So I want to start entirely from scratch, that way we don't have anything else that we're actually using with this, which I think is nice. Basically completely relighting the scene. We have the models, the textures, but really don't want anything else in the space. Now you can see here that there's still stuff actually showing up, and that's because that's like baked lighting information, so we'll go about actually getting rid of that shortly as well. But real quick, I'm going into the project settings, and what I want to do in the project settings is actually type in ray tracing, and I want to turn on support hardware ray tracing, turn on the ray tracing when available, ray trace skylight, and ray trace shadows. And so this is basically just converting it over to be ray traced environment. And then additionally we'll want to make sure that we have lumen reflections turned on. That way we get proper actual lumen working inside of the engine as well. Do want to just check off these two down bottom, just in case we're using it with modeled objects or rendering. So just making sure that everything has that ray tracing selected. And then I'm going to just type in reflection real quick, and we can find, let's see, actually going to scroll down to underneath engine. You can go to rendering, and this is where we can switch over, just because sometimes if you type in lumen and it's not currently like selected, then it won't show up. So if you basically go over to like the reflection method, we can switch that over to lumen, which is basically, yeah, what we want for the space. And then just to be sure, I can also actually select the, or type in lumen at the top as well, after I just make sure that nothing else is, needed at the moment. So I'm going to scroll back up, and now I want to just basically go over, just looking through one more time. Cool. So yeah, typing in lumen, want to do the lighting mode. That's good. Reflections, lumen. So should be good to go. So the big thing now is that pretty much to get all of that working with the ray tracing and stuff, you do need to restart the engine. So I'm going to go ahead and restart that now. It's going to pop up and let you know. And so now we have our engine actually restarted. So the big thing with this is it's going to take a long time to, especially with an environment like this, between the models, the textures and all, it's going to take a long time to actually compile all of that and compute through the shaders and everything. So be patient during this time, because it will take a little bit, but it only really takes one time to kind of cache all of this information, and you won't have to do this each time that it opens up. So it's like a one and done thing. But now that we have all of that going on, we are going to then be able to open it back up and pretty much have our environment pretty much ready to start lighting and stuff. We will still need to bake the lighting just to make sure that we get rid of all of that old baked information. But we are going to be using dynamic lighting and everything with our environment now, to where we don't have any more issues with that kind of stuff. So I'm going to fast forward real quick just because it's going to take a long time, and then we can get started with the lighting. So now I have fast forwarded with my environment, and the shaders and everything have compiled, and this is what it looks like. Like I said, we still have that baked information in there, so just need to clean that up real quick. One thing that I did want to get rid of as well is get rid of the sphere reflection captures. So you see that I have this warning here, but I used them previously for reflection and capturing in the environment. So that'll look a little bit different as well. And then I want to make sure, maybe just because it's such an old environment, I don't know what else potentially could be in here. So I might just run through and see if there's anything, just obvious, I guess, standing out lighting wise that could affect our environment. But everything else looks pretty good. So I think, we'll leave the fog in there. We'll leave the particle systems and all. And I think might delete, I guess not. I just have a light switch in there that was part of a like design aspect of it, but it doesn't have anything to do with the actual lighting or the environment. So I think it's good. Now what I want to do real quick though is I'm going to go up to build, and I'm just going to build lighting only, since we don't have any lighting or so. It should clean things up. But it's going to kick off swarm on the side, and being that there's nothing else going on, it should be pretty quick to actually send it back to the environment, and then we will have update where it, I believe, should be probably pitch black, because we have nothing besides the sky sphere or the skybox in the background. That's pretty much just showing in like a artificial environment. But then we'll be able to put in our directional light as well as our skylight. So basically though, like, this is a much better way of kind of lighting a scene. Like I was mentioning before, you don't want, especially for a game production, like an environment to have 30 or 40 different lights in it. That just doesn't work and doesn't make sense. And it's going to be weird if your character is running around in there and you can see pretty much that like the light hitting the character in weird ways and stuff. So what I want to do now that I have this environment is basically just use like 1 or 2 lights and see what I can do with it. So now that it is finished building or baking, we can see that it's gotten rid of the rest of that information pretty much. Like I said, we have fake sky sphere out there, and then some clouds that looks like were used for like artificial light kind of coming through the wood here, which is pretty nice. So we might play around with that and still actually use it with our system. But now we have a blank slate. I want to go over and actually add a directional light. So I'm going to bring that in and hit movable with it. So there we go. And boom. And I'm going to bump up the intensity. Looks pretty good. I think one thing is it looks like the trees are getting hit with it, but it might be having some issues with something else that is blocking it. So I might actually look into that, just make sure, because I think there's a lot of artificial stuff happening here, so I could probably delete that. And then let's see what else. Fly through here, type in my directional light again. So, and it might be one thing where the windows don't actually allow the light to come through, but I don't think that's the case at the moment. There we go. So I just had a bad angle for my lighting. So I do want to make sure that as I kind of work on this, I still look at the old workshop picture, just because I think we're drawing inspiration from it. So I'm gonna bring that up real quick and flip over to pretty much this is the primary shot. So do want to, like I said, kind of have that as the idea of like where I want my lighting and all to be, and we can of course play with that a little bit further. So I'm going to throw it around there. I think that looks not half bad, and then I think it's definitely a little bit warmer as well, but I do want to go ahead and get my skylight in here as well. So there we go, and maybe I'll bump up the intensity of the skylight a little bit, so just to see how it looks. With my directional light, I think a couple of things I can do is I'm going to use the temperature, and I might drop this down to 5,000, so it's a little bit later in the day. Indirect lighting intensity, let's say bump to 2, and then so we're starting to get just the look and pretty much the layout of our main couple of lights that we have. One thing I might do real quick is just after we did that baked lighting setup, I might just really quickly open this up one more time, pretty much just restarting it. So I think that'll be just safe to pretty much make sure that we have everything working properly. Do want to check in the project settings real quick, and gonna go to all settings again and make sure that ray tracing is on for everything, which it is. Cool. And then with the lumen, like we were looking at previously, that looks to be turned on properly as well. Then I just want to just check through here, make sure there was nothing else. So there we go. We're pretty much set to go. Like I said, I'm just going to real quickly restart my Unreal Editor one more time, just to make sure that we are on a clean basis. So now I have actually restarted the project pretty much, and things are working a little bit better. One thing that I did realize that I forgot is if you go into the project settings, Now we had everything turned on between the ray tracing as well as the lumen, except for one thing, and it's the most obvious thing with lumen, of course, and that is basically just the dynamic local illumination method. So it was not set to lumen. I did need to switch that over to lumen. And then you have to, of course, actually restart that just to actually, pretty much get the accurate results. One thing I'm just going to do real quick is with the reflection capture resolution for lumen, I'm going to switch it up to just a 256 or so temporarily. But yeah, now this is working better to where what we were kind of wanting before. I haven't changed anything else. I literally just enabled that and restarted the editor, but now we have it here. You can see that with some of this like intensity, we're getting a lot more proper kind of bounce light and stuff. But I think with the indirect lighting intensity, I can bump that up. You'll see that it will start to get some nice lighting being filled in with that indirect lighting. I do also want to make sure my skylight, let's see, that one's fine. I don't think those are bothering anything. Yes, so the skylight that can kind of help with the environment might actually use the sky atmosphere as well. So let's go ahead and delete these pieces. So those are a little bit older, and then what I want to do is add a sky atmosphere. So there we go. This is definitely going to change things around a good bit, just because it's definitely different than what we had previously. But if I wanted to have my clouds and stuff, there's also the volumetric clouds that I could add in here. So pretty much the same thing that I had previously with that artificial texture, but they're all going to work a little bit better with each other. So I'm going to jump back over to my skylight, and you can see that I can like fill in with some lighting if I want using that skylight, and I have it turned on to real-time capture, which it's now actually grabbing it from the sky atmosphere and the environment that we have. I'm going to switch back over to my directional light and pretty much just start to play with kind of what I want out of this piece. Think might have to turn up the intensity a little bit, and I'll probably need to, one other thing is my post-process volume. So this I believe has an exposure set, so you can see that that is pretty low. So maybe I'll do a 0.5 for both of these. And like I said, this is just the min and max brightness. I could also turn these off, and you can see how the exposure kind of adjusts. It's getting some pretty cool results, I think, in here, but it's a little bit blown out. So that's kind of the point, especially with like trying to get a consistent look inside. It can be nice to kind of clamp it down or so a little bit. So let's say that I have a 0.25 for my min brightness, and then a 1 for my max brightness. So that's not looking too bad. I might pull up that picture again of the environment and see where we're kind of standing between the two. Definitely like the back fill light that's happening. Before I was actually using, I think, a different directional light going the opposite way to do a lot of that fill lighting in, but we can probably achieve it pretty decently with a mixture of our different lights that we have going on. Now, like, it is of course going to be more accurate with the new lighting and kind of what we're pushing, but that's just something that we need to keep in mind as we're lighting this space. I think also these probably aren't necessary. I know they worked decently for the other shot, but I think having the kind of the rays coming through here instead works much better. And of course, this is an older way of doing it as well. I could actually use some of the newer tech to get them working properly. This is before there was like a ton of God ray features and stuff with our lighting. So I'm gonna go ahead and just delete those out. So there we go. And okay, those are our particles. So I still need the particles, but I think everything else is doing all right. And I'm going to jump back over my skylight. So it's just a mixture really of like going between all of your different lights and working with them to tweak what you're kind of going for. So with my skylight, now that I have that in here and it's set up with the sky atmosphere, I can definitely like see how I can pretty much bring in some more lighting to the space. If I want a cooler tone in here as well, I can go about seeing how I could do that. So let's say, and maybe I don't want to like exactly copy what I made before, but I think there's a lot of nice things about it, at least, that makes it feel pretty believable, I would say. There is just like kind of a softness to a lot of the lighting, but I think in general the directional light could definitely be improved. So yeah, let's get some cooler blues into the shadows a little bit. So something in this area, just temporarily, nothing like too crazy. And then with our sky atmosphere, yeah, basically you can go through here and take some time if you need to play around with some of these values. But I think, yeah, it's just kind of a back and forth of what you're trying to go for. So let's say that's all right. Directional light, I think since it is coming through the window, we could see about like maybe turning it up. But then the sky is getting pretty like intense and blown out. So maybe with that, like we want to look at, looks like the exposure is probably one of the main factors of that. So we might actually go back to our post-process volume. And let's see, yeah, if we cut both of these down to, typically, yeah, I will have both of them. If I'm wanting it to not really change, I'll have both of them at 1, just because it is yeah, pretty easy to control it that way. But I can bring it up to 0.5 or bring it down to 0.5 and pretty much just adjust everything else with that in mind. So yeah, that's not too bad. Now, yeah, like I said, we can go down here and actually try out some light shafts. So I'm going to maybe look at how we could get some bloom, basically go in there with our light shafts there, and then yeah, the occlusion could be helpful too for that. So that's not half bad. Of course, we're not seeing it from this angle, but if we had like a camera running through here, we could definitely like get that effect that we're kind of going for. So and like I said, these are all things that you'll kind of just have to play around with and tweak as you go. The ones that I had placed in are more like particles. They're a lot more like artificial, but they can be nice because you get that that control pretty much to where you can see it in the thumbnails overall. Like you can see, yeah, some of it kind of coming through. But I think if this was like, yeah, a more realistic environment, it definitely makes more sense to try to go about getting it working in this way. That way it's only really happening when you're standing in the light. So I need to select this one more time. That's the depth range. Maybe I'll do 0.1 for this. That's not too bad. Cool. And then let's see, where's our lighting's a little bit more, I think I'm going to turn off the snapping. That way we're getting more accurate kind of hits on the environment. So there we go. I think this wall, one problem is like the wood itself is like white. Would definitely probably try to fix that if I could, just because like it looks good, but yeah, I think it's just slightly too white. So maybe I could lower the intensity here. So let's convert this over to a parameter and see if that works for it. Make writable. And yeah, just slightly kind of tweak it to be, I don't want it to be like very dark and all, but I want it to be like a bit of a lighter tone. Because I think just a little bit, yeah, to settle it down so it's not like overly blowing out when we're looking at it, because yeah, I think just the posts and them being so contrast, it's making it feel a little bit weird. But as you can see, like the lighting, I think overall is working quite well in here. It feels a lot more realistic. And in general, like we're getting some really solid bounce lighting kind of coming through the space. And we already are only just using 2 different lights with that. So I think like for sure, like already at this point, it is feeling a little bit more realistic. Now it might not necessarily be as, I guess, almost like painterly or so with how much the lighting was kind of controlled and edited in the previous version. And there's some spots where I definitely think we could still contribute from some smaller features, kind of like the light that was hitting the beams before. We're not getting that as much, and I think we could potentially get these emissives to work better. But the lighting in general for the space and here seems to be starting to do pretty nicely. So what I want to do now is try out a couple of other features. So I'm going to go over here and actually go to my post-process again. So I think what would be great is actually adding some bloom, just a tad, to make those windows kind of blow out a bit more, because it is such a dark space that we're in. And then maybe we'll turn on a light in here or two, just to get it working properly, or at least like, getting some more movement throughout the space. But I'm going to go down here and find the bloom settings. So just need to scroll through it. There it is, under lens. And yeah, I think nothing huge, but I think it's set to 0.65. Maybe we'll try 0.8. .75. And now one other thing that might be a factor as well is this glass material. I think not sure what's actually happening on it, but it seems pretty light. So maybe we want to actually get some other just, I guess, tint with it. So let's see here. Opacity. So that won't be too bad. I'm gonna just go through a couple of these, and there we go. Opacity. Nothing crazy, like I said. I just wanted to basically just adjust it a little bit to where we're getting yeah, more indication that there's actually a window there, because I think beforehand we're not getting that as much. And I might even turn down the color if I wanted to get some more kind of, I guess, dirty brown look to it. There we go. Cool. So yeah, that's not looking half bad. I think this one is the, yeah, this one's the one that's a little bit blown out, it feels like. So I wanted to do that one as well. And then trying to get the overly white windows out of there, because they're a bit distracting and not as realistic as I feel that they could be. So there we go. Cool. So yeah, that's looking a little bit better. We've got some artificial trees out here that are doing all right. Definitely, I think one thing that could contribute to these potentially. So I'm just going to go in here real quick and add the speed tree color variation node that I mentioned in my previous video. You can actually use it for vegetation, and it works pretty well. So I'm going to just place this in here, and then amount, let's say a 0.04, and hit save. And it should just give us a little bit more variation. That way each of those trees are yeah, a bit more different, I would say, than the same tone that they had with the green. I'm going to exaggerate a little bit to see. Okay, so yeah, I'm going to bring that back down. And this is kind of part of it, like textures, lighting, effects, like all of them kind of work together. So as you improve other stuff, like it can improve like the overall scene. So it's looking okay. Definitely this red, I feel like it's a bit too saturated and warm. So if I were to go back and redo it, I would potentially, make the tones match up a little bit more, so it's not as contrasting in the environment. But other than that, most of the tones look somewhat all right, I would say. And looking over here, we can see, yeah, lighting's working. I think it's just some of the colors are needing a little bit of tweaking, but in general, like, it's starting to feel more believable. Definitely think like having maybe some more light filling in some of these spaces. So maybe I think our skylight, we don't want too much, because definitely like we are going for a more realistic look. So it makes sense that, like, some parts of this aren't necessarily like being super well lit, just because, like, yeah, it wouldn't be that case. So it's not too bad. And then I think that's where it's starting to get a little bit more unrealistic. So we could either find a middle ground, but honestly, I think I'm still liking the 10 more, just based off of how how the lighting's working and stuff in here. I think that it's feeling pretty all right. So yeah, I think, let me pull this back up. Like I said, like this is a lot more kind of filled in with the lighting, but there's less realisticness, I believe, with a lot of this. And yeah, how the bounce lighting is kind of working with the space. I wanted to go through real quick with my sky atmosphere a little bit more, see. Yeah, that color's all right. All right, cool. Could see if I could get a little bit more bounce with the indirect lighting intensity, but I also don't want it to be too intense. Shadow cascades are good. Yeah, so just kind of running through here and seeing what else we can do to push it a little bit more with the directional light. At least I think most of that is all right. My skylight, again, gonna up the cube map resolution a little bit. Maybe push that, and then yeah, some cool. So yeah, we haven't done like a ton with the environment overall. We're just using pretty much, I would say, like the main three items that like, of course, UE5, like the directional light, the skylight, and then we have a sky atmosphere attached. That way we can actually have real-time capture from the sky atmosphere, and yeah, basically getting what we have right now. I think, like, yeah, this is a little blown out here, like I was saying, but we are pushing it more into the inside, so I think that's kind of worth it, since we aren't going to an outside space to get that feeling. And if you feel like at any point it gets too much, you can always, especially for inside spaces, like, yeah, I do have some of these blockers and stuff that help with that, but I think it's doing, yeah, all right. Mainly because a lot of these walls and stuff had gaps and stuff between them, so I wanted to fill that in. But one other thing, of course, is our light up here that we were talking about previously, and I can actually use the emissive now with lumen, which wasn't a thing before, to get more light out of it. So what we can do here is kind of push the intensity of the emissive. So let's say we do something like that, and yeah, that's definitely way too much, but that's, yeah, pretty cool what it is doing. I think bringing down this value a bit more, and the color, and I think another thing too is this wall over here. I'm just going to throw a basic Lambert on because I had it, I think, all the way around where it had the emissive, but I really just want it kind of on that top point where we have, like, basically our artificial sky. So there we go, and yeah, so that works pretty well. I'm gonna push this in some, I believe. And these were, a lot of this was like because we were baking previously, and so it was helping get some cleaner bakes and make sure that stuff isn't having as many issues. But now that we don't have that, let's see, we can actually kind of not rely on those as much, which is pretty nice. So there we go. Boom. So yeah, we have our environment now being lit with just 2 or 3 different lights, and I think overall it's looking pretty solid comparatively to the 40 or so other lights that it took to get the other environment looking correct. So that's pretty cool to just see how it's kind of simplified things down. And be able to actually get a much more realistic bounce with lumen and really filling in a lot of the space as we see here with our environment. I think, just in general, this is looking pretty awesome. Now I think some of this, I can just turn up the intensity of the, like cascade amounts and stuff with the ray tracing. To where it won't dance like that. It's just because of the lower resolution and the amount that is kind of computing in some of those areas that is causing that. But that's a pretty simple thing to fix. But I think besides that, I wanted to just run through here and make sure you can see here basically the lumen scene. This kind of shows the resolution and everything of the lighting. So you can always bump that up or so, but I think, general, like I was saying, if I jump back over to the detail lighting, looks pretty good. We're definitely getting a lot hotter hits in the middle part that are bouncing back and hitting this part, but I think that works pretty well, and feels pretty realistic compared. But that's pretty much it for just simplifying the lighting and taking an older environment that's 6 or so years old and pretty much getting rid of everything, bringing it into UE5 and getting it set up with the new lighting to allow it to look like this. So that is about it this time. If you have any questions, of course, feel free to drop them below, and I will see you in the next video.